Okay, we're going to review the Mishnah on Tzadi Chesam and Beis on the bottom. Ashel is a para, someone who borrowed a para. Reuven borrowed a para from Shimon. V'shilchol biyad b'noi biyad avdei biyad shluchai. And Shimon sent this para that Reuven had borrowed. He sent it to him in the in the hands of either his son or his eved or his shliach. Or with in the hands of the son, Eved, or Shliach of Reuben, of the borrower, Umesa, and the animal, this par, died on the way before it arrives at Reuben Potter. It's Potter. Now, we're gonna. Rashi brings we're not talking about a technical shliach. We're talking about, because obviously if it was sent by the shayl to receive it, once it came to his hand, it would be in the hands of the shayl. But it's talking about someone who's an assumed shliach, someone who works with him. Rava answers that it's talking about someone he appointed he sent as a shliach, but not to be his shliach. He sent him as a shliach with Adam. That if this guy wants to use you as a shliach, he has the option. If the lender wants to use you, but it can't be that actually the shayl made him a shliach, because then Ein Chanami, once it arrived at the shliach, then the shayl would be chayiv. The Mishnah continues. Amalei Hashel shulchli biyabni biyad avdi biyad shluchi biyad bincha biyad avdcha biyad shlucha. If the shayl said specifically, no, I want you to send it with them. And the shloil acquiesced to this. He agreed and said, yes, send it with these people. In that case, since the shayl has specifically instructed the shayl to send with them, then he's going to be chayiv. The same thing will be when they return it, meaning when at the end of the term of the loan, if the shayl sends it back, if he sends it with someone, if it's a shliach of the mashal, of the person who lent it, he's always going to be mechoyev. It's not going out of the rishus of the shayl until it comes to the mashal, until it comes to the lender. But if the lender that you specifically send it with my shliach, then at that point the lender is taking responsibility even before it comes to his hands. So Dr. Gemara. The Gemara goes back to the first din. We said biyad avdai. If biyad avdai chayiv, if we said, we're talking about not the first case, but in the second din, where the shayl had said, we're talking about the first set of dinim, where we're talking about the shayl, not on the chazar, where the shayl had said, I want you to send it, in the hands, he says to the mashal, right? Shimon is the lender and Reuven is the borrower. And Reuven says to Shimon, send it in the hands of your son, send it in the hands of your shliach, send it in the hands of your eved. As soon as Shimon puts it into the hand of his eved, for example, Reuven is going to be responsible for any incident that happens. He's already a shema. It's still in the hands of Reuven, even though in the hands of Shimon, I should say. Even though Reuven instructed Shimon to send it in the hands of Shimon's eved, but Shimon's eved, yad eved ki yad rabbi. So it's as if he told Shimon, put it from one of your hands and put it in your other hand. It still hasn't, until it gets to Reuven, until it gets out of the hands of Shimon, it shouldn't be Shimon. Reuven should not be chayiv. Amar Shmuel, but eved ivri. We're talking about an eved ivri. The loy kani le gufay, where the yad eved is not ki yad rabbi. By an eved knani, whatever a Evet Knani finds or he's kind of belongs to his Adam. That's not the case by an Evet Ivri. An Evet Ivri is an independent person. So if Ruvain told Shimon to send it in the hand of his Evet Ivri, even though it's still in the hand of Shimon's Evet Ivri, Reuven can be kainet in the sense that he's going to be chai finds. Rav Amar Afil Tema Evet Knani. Could even talking about Evet Knani. Nasa Kaimala Hekisha B'Makal V'Yitavai. It's as if, even though it hasn't left the rishus of Shimon in the sense that it's still beyond shliach, the shliach is irrelevant. It's as if Reuven had said to Shimon, "Your animal, I want you to give it a bang give it a kick in the rear end, and it will go on its own volition to me, and I'm taking responsibility. I just want you to send it to me." The Shimon says, "Okay, listen, if that's what you want, you're taking responsibility. You're the shamer." So as soon as he says that, it's going to be the responsibility is going to transition from Shimon, from the lender, to Ruvain, the borrower. Okay, we're continuing. We're on the top of Tzadi Testament now. We're continuing with the Mishnah, right? The Mishnah had said, we'd seen the Mishnah. The Mishnah said, if Shimon lent a para to Ruvain, if Reuven specifically said, Shilcha, I want you to send it to me, if Shimon sends it in the hands of his Eved, or in the hands of his son, or the hands of his Shliach, it doesn't make a difference. Even though it's Shimon's Eved, Reuven is chayav, since he said, I want you to send it in the hands of your Eved. So the Gemara asked the question, Yad Eved ki Yad Rabbi. So what does it help that Reuven told Shimon to send it in the hands of his Eved, of Shimon's Eved? But it's still in Shimon's hands. So one answer we said was to talk about Eved Ivri. That was the first teretz. That was Shmuel's teretz. Rav said it could even talk about Eved Knani, but it's talking about where it says if Reuven had said, send it out of your rishus, hit it with a stick, hit this animal with a stick and send it on its way, and from that point I'm taking rishus. So even though it's in the hands of his Eved, we disregard that. That's not important, because the point is that Reuven had said, Shilcha, send it to me, and he was taking responsibility from that point. Meisvei, correct the Gemara. Hashoyel hapara. The Brisa says, someone who borrows a para, if he sends it in the hands of his child or his shliach, meaning Shimon sent it in the hands of his own son or in the hands of his shliach, then he's chayev. That means the borrower is going to be chayev. Reuven is going to be chayev from that point. Biad avdoi pata, but if he sends it in the hands of his eved, he's pata. So Bishlam Shmuel, how are we going to understand this brisa with mechalik between sending with the lender's child or his shliach, as opposed to sending with his eved? So according to Shmuel, who answered our Mishnah, Masnisim be'eved ivri. So our Mishnah, we had explained the reason why Reuven could be kaina to be chayiv in einsin from the time it's sent, even with an eved, because we said the eved was talking about an eved ivri. So the eved ivri is not yad ki yad rabba. So Brisa be'eved knani, and we'll explain the Brisa is talking about an eved knani, and then eved knani we would say yad eved ki yad rabbi, and therefore it remains in Shimon's rishus. It remains the rishus of the lender until it actually arrives, until it leaves his own rishus. El Rav, according to Rav, who says that when someone sends it, it doesn't make a difference if he sends it with his eved, because in the Mishnah we say it's treated as if he said, give it a kick and send it on its way. So it's as if the Shayil said specifically, I'm taking rishus of Einsim from the time you send it, even though it's biyad abdai. Kasha, what's the chiluk? Why would the brisa be any different? That same svara should apply. Rav says, you misunderstood how I understood our Mishnah. It's not when someone says shilcha, when Reuven, the borrower, says to the lender, send it biyad evet, that it's treated as if he said, hit it with a stick and send it on its way, and I'm taking grushas. We're talking about, our Mishnah is talking about a case where he did say that. It's not just that he said, send it biyad evet, and send it in the hands of your son or in the hands of your shliach. In addition to that, he said, give it a kick, hit it with the stick so it should come to me. So since he said two things, and one of the things he said was send it on its way, that's the reason why it's irrelevant that it's still beyond the Evet Knani of Shimon, of the lender.
So how do you answer this, Tira? The
Bryce is talking about where he didn't say it. Bryce is talking about where it's a regular case. We just said Shilcha biyad Evet. And then we say Yad Evet ki Yad Rabbi. De'itma. Hashileni parascha. Someone said, lend me your para. Avamale biyad mi. And the lender said, who should I send it with? Avamale kisha v'ma'akal v'tav. And he said, just hit it with a stick and it should come to me. Since it left the rishus of the mashal, he hit it with the stick, and it went on its way to the shayil. The shayil is going to be chayiv. So we see that this is a similar svara brought by the Amoraim. Name Misayele, I'll bring you a raya from a brisa. Hashalei paraschav amale biyad mi, amale kishav makam. B'tavai kivin shas mishus mashal umeisa chayiv. We have a brisa that parrots, that says this precise, seems to say the same exact din that we just brought b'shem Amoraim. Amaravashi, no, that brisa is not a raya. We're talking over there when that brisa is not a raya to Rav that there is such a svara of that we say where he says he kisha v'makal, it's always going to automatically go into the rishus of the shayil immediately. That's talking about a specific case. It's talking about where Shimon, the lender, had a property that, let's say it's open to the rishus harabim, and behind it there was another property, and that property behind it is where the borrower lived, or he had his field was there, and so Reuven, the borrower, said to Shimon, "Listen, I'm right behind you. Hit your animal with a stick, and it'll go into my rishus, and then at that point I'm going to be responsible for it." So since there's no other way for the animal to go, if it goes out of Shimon, it's by force going into Reuven. Therefore, as soon as Shimon sends it on its way, Reuven is going to be responsible. Because when Shimon, the lender, sends it, it's certainly going to Reuven. So that's not a raya to Rav Svar that we say in a normal case where Shimon lives at one end of town and Reuven lives on the other town, and Reuven says, hit it with a stick and it will come to me. It could get lost along the way. Reuven is really taking on responsibility in that case. But this brisa is not talking about Reuven saying much of anything. He's saying, give it a hit of the stick, and it'll immediately go into his chatzar, and he's going to be kind of with king and chatzar. So member. What says, if that's what the brisa is talking about, where they're adjoining, and there is no other way for the animal to go other than to go directly into Reuven's rishus without going through any public property, what's the chiddush? Obviously, it's as soon as it goes into Reuven's rishus, Reuven is responsible. It wouldn't make a difference if he had sent it without saying hikisha b'makal. In any case, it's going, as soon as it leaves Shimon, it's going into Reuven. So there's these Rashi says the ikka gaziyasa yesh b'chatzar hamashal zavius v'uksin. There are these corners and turns. Sheichayla losu sham u'lishamet b'machva. So he's talking about where there are nooks and crannies. It could be that the shayil will give it a hit with the stick, but it might not necessarily reach the nishal, the shayil. It might not reach the borrower right away. He's going to hide out. The animal will hide out in a corner. So maybe the shayil is not taking responsibility, even though he hit it with a stick. Maybe even though the shayil said hit it with a stick and it should come to me, he still doesn't mean that he doesn't know that it's going to really come to him right away. And the hitter also they don't know that it's going to go directly into the shayil. So maybe that's not considered enough to make it that it goes into the rishus, even though he said hit it with a stick. It's as if the animal came in. He said, "I want to borrow the animal," but he doesn't know that it's going to come to him right away. So maybe tomorrow it will come to me, and therefore maybe the shayl was not so mukdas that it's going to arrive at him right away. So that's what we're coming to tell you. Even so, since they're adjoining and there is no way for the animal to go someplace else, it could only hang out longer by the mashal. As soon as the shayl says, "Give it a hit and send it to me," he's immediately taking responsibility as soon as it comes into his rishus. So I'm sorry. Even though one might say that maybe the shayl is not saying that no, if they're next to each other, the worst that the animal could do is stay by the mashal. He is saying and as soon as the animal comes to him, he's going to be responsible. Amar Avuna, Hashayl karda mechaveiroi, someone who borrows an axe from his friend. Bakaboy, as soon as the shayl, so when Reuven is the borrower, he borrows an axe from Shimon. Bakaboy, as soon as Reuven uses the axe, kana, he's kainet. Loi bakaboy, but before he uses the axe, loi kana, he's not kainet. This is very schwer on our Mishnah, right? We just said that he could be kainet. If he said, "Send it to me," as soon as it arrives in his rishus, he's kainet. Lemai. If you're going to say that he's not kainet, the borrower is not kainet until he uses it. That if there's an einus before that, he borrowed this axe. Reuben borrowed this axe. He's not going to be chayiv in einsin until he uses it. Ma'ishna para. How is it different than our para? The b'sha'ah she'ela. As soon as he borrows it, right? Our Mishnah says as soon as it arrives in his rishus, whether it's where he appointed a shliach or when it arrives into his rishus, we say at that point immediately the shayl is chayiv. And now we're coming up, Rav Huna, and saying that it's still not in the rishus of the shayl until he uses it. Ela l'chazara. It's only Gemara says it's not talking about legabe when the shayl is chayiv in einsin, but rather it's talking about when the mashal, when Shimon, who lent the axe, at what point could he change his mind and say, "You know what, I don't want to lend you the axe, give it back." So baka boila matzi hadabe mashal. Once the borrower used the axe, so he already started the term of the shayla, right? That's what makes it a shayl. So then the mashal can't borrow it. The mashal can't be chayzer. Still a svar. What was the svar for that?
The mashal has to take it for some time. He can't return it early.
The shayl?
Yeah.
No, he could return it early, but the mashal can't say, "I changed my mind." Once you started already the term, the person who's lending it can't say, "I want it back. I said I was going to give it to you 30 days. You only used it for 1 day. Send it back."
The mashal can return. Okay,
yeah. The lender can't be chayzer. But until he started using it, matzi mashal hadabe. At that point, he could be chayzer. Let's see Rashi. He says, and this is going to be important. Rashi explains, because one might say, as soon as the shayl brings it into his rishus, he does a mashicha on the animal, even though he hasn't, or with the axe, he picked up the axe, he did hakbah, which would be the similar type of kinyan. One might say that that's the beginning of the kinyan, and even though he didn't use it, he's still not the mashal, the lender can't be chayzer because there was a kinyan of the she'ela, of the borrowing. Kamash Malan, that no, she'ela does not have the same din of kinyan as a regular kinyan, right? When someone buys something, that's for sure. We've seen many times the way you kind of something when you buy it, metaltalin is by being moishechet or by being magbiyet, but schiris is not a kinyan. You're not owning something to own it. You're not taking it to own it. You're taking it for a term of borrowing. So Rav Huna says that is not effectuated. That a kinyan doesn't take place for Mashiach. Even though he was moishechet into his rishus, he still needs more. He still has to use it for the she'ela to go into effect. So that is the shita of Rav Huna. Upliga de Rav Ami. Rav Huna, who says that when a borrower gets into his rishus, he's not kind of the object, the pikadon, until he uses it in the sense that the owner cannot be chayzer. He's disagreeing with Rav Ami. The Amar Rav Ami, hamashal kordem shel hegdish. If someone lends a axe of hegdish, the lender. Okay, so Shimon had in his rishus an axe that belonged to hegdish. He had been makdash it, and he forgot. And Reuben came and said, "Can I borrow your axe?" He said, "Sure, I got an axe." He forgot that it was shel hegdish, and then Reuben takes it and he uses it. So we're saying, as soon as Reuben takes it, as soon as it's lent to Reuben by Shimon, Shimon is going to be over on Me'ilah. He's going to have to bring a carbon, and he's going to have to pay a chaimish. But how much? What does he pay for? He pays because the hana he's having, when someone lends to something, it makes him feel good. You're doing someone a favor. So the quantity of this me'ilah is the amount of taivas hana, the value of that someone would want to lend to someone. Rashi explains this. Mo'al hamashal l'shalom lahegdish karen shenene b'hashalas. He has to pay the amount of that hana that he had by lending it to Reuben. What's the Tevas Hana? How much would it be worth of him to pay? So the value of the Me'ilah is the amount that a person would pay someone who to be a big guy and be able to say, I lent someone something, which is not the same thing as the schirus, right? We don't say that a shayl, the value of the she'ela is the amount of what it would cost to rent it, because this is less than that. This is the amount that a person gets, that he feels good, that he could lend, he has the ability to lend someone something. And not only that, so not only is the lender chayiv me'ilah for the value that he got to lend someone, the chaveroi, the borrower, once he gets this axe of hegdish, he's allowed to use the axe, even though it belongs to hegdish. It continues to belong to hegdish. Why is that? Because what is it that he's using? He's using this hana that the lender had already extracted from hegdish. These lenders already chayiv me'ilah because he took the hana of lending. So his using the axe, now when the borrower uses the axe, that's something that was already taken from hegdish. So he's using that which had already been removed from hegdish rishos. This use that he gets out of the axe is equivalent. It's what the lender had already taken from hegdish. So let's see Rashi. And this even though this borrower knows after it came to his hand, since the borrower made this already mistake, this that which the borrower is using already went out to chulin. To me, it's a tremendous chiddush in svara, right? This guy knows that this belongs to hegdish, his axe belongs to hegdish, and he's allowed to go use it, and it's not a me'ilah, because we say that the use was removed from hegdish. Okay, you see, I'm excited about it.
We never really see this.
What, that someone could use something of hegdish?
We see this like my Shasheni, if you machaf it, and you have das for it.
You paid it, you mean?
You have the owner. And
it belongs to hegdish.
It belongs to hegdish.
It still belongs to hegdish.
And
it's still hegdish's axe.
The other guy's well.
You would think you can never use.
And we also think like every hammer blows a nacha iser.
Yeah. But the answer is that that's already gone.
It's already gone already.
It's already gone from hegdish. Yeah. Very longish. Frek the Gemara of Amai Chaver Mutal of Akeva Lechatchila Nehadre V'Loy Lekanja V'Loy Lemoil. So he's saying, if we say, like Rav Huna, that someone who borrows something first gets his kinyan at the point when he starts using it. So the fact that the lender gave it to the borrower should not have been that at that point it was already me'ilah. we're saying that the lender can always, according to Rav Huna, he could always be chayzer up until the point where the borrower uses it. So how can we tell the borrower to go ahead and use this axe of Hegdish? Until he uses it, it still belongs to Hegdish. Nothing changed. The Rishus didn't change. It should be that Shimon was not Mal. Elamai, you see, not like Rav Huna, but rather that there is a kinyan of Mashicha, that the borrower, as soon as he gets it into Rishus, that's when the Mi'ila happens, and that's why the borrower can use this axe of Hegdish. Upliga de Rav Elazar. And not only is Rav Huna being chaylik on Rav Ami, he's also chaylik on Rav Elazar. When Rav Huna says that the borrower first gets Rishus when he uses the object, that's not like Rav Elazar. Rav Elazar, k'derech she'tiknu mashicha b'lekuchas, kak tiknu mashicha b'shayrim. He says that like Rashi had pointed out before, that Rav Huna is not holding that mashicha is kaina, but Rav Elazar explicitly disagrees with that. He says as soon as you do mashicha on something that is rented or that is something that is borrowed on a shmira, that mashicha itself is kaina. You don't have to use it as soon as there's a mashicha. There's a kinyan that belongs to it's in the rishus of the shomer, and then obviously the lender would not be able to be chayz. Tanya namiyach, you came saying to mashicha b'lekuchas, kak tiknu mashicha b'shemer. B'shem shekarka niknas b'kasef b'shtar b'chazaka, kach chiris nikna b'kasef b'shtar u'b'chazaka. We make just like you can be kind of metaltalin with mashicha, you also when you're lekech, you could also be kind of with you could legabi a rental or legabi a shmira with a mashicha, and just like karka can be nicknamed b'kasef b'shtar b'chazaka, so too schiras can be nicknamed b'kasef b'shtar b'chazaka. So the more schiras ma'avid. What are you talking about? We're talking about a karka. Now all of a sudden we're switching to schiras. We're saying that schiras you could be seicher, an animal with kasef shtar b'chazaka. Since when do you have metaltalin that are rented being nicknamed b'shtar b'chazaka? Amar Chizda schiras karka. No, what it means to say is when someone rents karka, you could use, when you do the regular kinyan of karka, that's kind of the schiras, which is equivalent to what we said legabi mashicha when you're talking about an animal, that it meant to say schiras karka, just like we said schiras of an animal. Amar Shmuel, Hayman de Gozel Chavitza de Tamri Mechabre. Someone who stole a wheel of pressed dates from his friend. Vespa Chamishim Tamri. There are 50 tamarim in this wheel. Agav Hadadi, and they're Agav Hadadi Mistav Benun, where they're sold as a unit of 50 dates. It's sold for 50 nechichada, -1. It's sold for 49. Because it's sold like that, and then you sell them off one by one. Chada, but when they're being sold individually at retail, bistavin benun, then they're sold for 50. Lehedjet misham chamishim lechichada, lehegdish misham chamishim v'chum shayu. So if he stole it from an hedjet, then he pays the cheaper wholesale price. Usually, a guy who has a store will buy a wheel of dates of 50 dates for 49 zuz, and he'll sell them off one by one, so he'll make 2%, very low margins in the supermarket industry. But if he stole it from Hegdish, then he has to pay the retail price. He has to pay chamishim, he has to pay 50 zuz, and he has to also pay the additional keren, the additional chaimish that you pay for being mal. Masha ein came b'maz. However, if someone is mazik, le mishal chumsha. Taisus explains that not only are you not mishal chumsha, you don't pay the keren either midaraisa. That there's no. The Torah says me'im re'eyu. If you're mazik, shall it's only if you're mazik of a hedjit, but not if you're mazik from hegdish. The Amar ishki yechel kodesh prat lemazik. The Torah says when a person is mazik, a person eats kodesh, but not if he's mazik. So that's this last part about mazik is not really the point. But we had said that you're mechalik within a gazlan, whether it was geisel from a regular person, a hedgit, or is geisel from hegdish, that he has to pay more when he's geisel from hegdish. Why does he only pay 49 when he steals from a hedgit? Namely, let the hedgit say, I'm a storekeeper. I would have sold it one by one. So you caused me to lose the 50 that I would have sold it for. That's what it's worth it to me. We know that there's a rule that generally legabi mazikin were makel. That means when it comes to how do we if you remember back, it was this in Bava Kama, we said rather than when someone damages someone's sada, rather than the person who damaged paying whatever fruit he ruined, we say how much is this entire sada worth less because when you have this base or this amount that's missing. So we do it in a way that's favorable to the mazik that he doesn't have to pay as much. So too over here, we're going to evaluate the cost in a way that's favorable to the mazik that he doesn't have to pay as much. We'll let him pay the wholesale price rather than the retail price. Remember the Sava Shmuel didn't hedgit lav kedin gavaya dami, but we said Shmuel had said that only applies that he has to pay 49 if he stole from a hedgit, but if he stole from hedgit, he pays the full amount. So it seems like Shmuel is saying that a hedgit is not treated as favorably as hegdish, and hegdish will be more strict and will require him to pay. Will require the mazik to pay a larger amount, or to evaluate the hezek in a more stringent way. But not all evan kairame hegdish loy mal. If someone took a rock, if the gizbar, someone who was responsible for holding on to some hegdish, and he took a piece, a rock, a stone, or a beam that belonged to hegdish. Loy mal, if he just took it, it was in his rishus before, and then he took it he said, I'm taking it. Nothing happened. It's still in his rishus. It still belongs to hegdish. He didn't do anything. Nasal chaveroi, but if he gave it to his chaver, now it went out of the rishus of hegdish. He was the rishus of hegdish himself. When he puts it out of his rishus, then there's me'ilah. His chaver didn't know about it, and he didn't do anything. It was taken out by the gizbar. However, if the gizbar, rather than just lifting it up and saying, I'm taking it, he built it into his house, there's no me'ilah. While it's in his house, that means we're not talking about when he built it into his house, but he placed it, let's say, as a beam to act as a roof. Until he uses it, there's no me'ilah because it remains in his rishus and it's still available for hegdish. He has to take it away from hegdish until it's either removed from hegdish or he has hana. From the fact that we're saying that when he uses it as a beam and he has enough from it, it's not taking anything away from hegdish. Hegdish is not losing anything from it, but since he's enjoying it, he's having enough from it, even though it's a zenan of a zelech chaser, it's still considered to be a me'ilah. That will teach us in general to the rule that someone who is zenan of a zelech chaser has to pay him. That there's a chiyuv to pay. Now, the point of all this, it's really not the niceties of the svara. The point is that we're saying you could extrapolate from what the din of hegdish is to the din of a hedgit. So this is not like Shmuel, who said we're mechalik. We say we're more stringent when someone steals from hegdish than you do from hedgit. So how could you say from the fact that we see that someone who uses the beam of hegdish is going to be mechayiv, even though hegdish is not losing anything, to say the same will hold true of a hedgit. By a hedgit, we're not so machmer the gabi using that of a chaver as we are from hegdish. So that's not a taina. Even though that was saying this b'shem Shmuel was chayzer on what he said over there. It means he doesn't really agree that you can learn from this that hadar b'chatz chaver is kana. How do you know that he was chayzer from that which he said that you can learn the din of zenan of zelech chaser from hektish? Maybe he's chayzer from what he said over here. Legabi someone who stole from his friend, as opposed to when someone stole the wheel of 50 dates. Zak Gemara, loy mehi hadabe the Rava the Amar Rava hagdish shaloi midas kehagdish midas dami. There's a problem in general with Rava's svar over there. We want to learn the din of shoyl shaloi midas of zen and of chaser, but there's no such thing as shoyl shaloi midas of hagdish. Hagdish is a representative of the Rebbeinu Shalom. The Rebbeinu Shalom knows all and sees all. He is omnipotent and he knows everything. So there's no such thing as he doesn't know Shalom Midas. It's always Midas. So therefore, that you can't prove anything. So there's a totally unrelated problem with the memra of Shmuel over there, and therefore we would prefer to say that he's chayzer on that. We have this problem. Amarav, Hani Shakuloi, the Tavut Chavita the Chamra Lechenvas. There were these schleppers, these workers. They broke a chavis of a barrel of wine of a storekeeper. And they did it b'pshia. The question is, how much they have to pay? B'yuma the shukam is davna behei. There's a continuation. We're talking about how to evaluate. We had this case of the 50 dates, and there's two different ways to calculate the value. This is a similar type of question. So this barrel of wine that they broke, b'yuma the shukam is davna behei. On the day of the market, it sold for more. It sold for 5. B'shayum is davna ba'arba. But on a regular day, it's only sold for 4. If they're going to return, these guys who broke it, they have to pay. If they return it to him before the day of the market, when it's sold for 5, they could return to him a barrel of wine, and he'll sell it on that day. Hopefully, he'll get 5. But if it's any other day, then they have to pay 5. They can't say, we're just going to give you a barrel that you can sell now for 4, since they took away from him the opportunity to sell it on the market. They have to reimburse him for the fuller value. That's only if this guy, the nizik, the person, the chenveni, doesn't have other barrels to sell. That means if he didn't go through the market and he sold out all of everything that he had in his inventory. But if he still has inventory that he didn't sell on the market day, I'm sorry, he should have sold what he had, so that he can't say you owe me 5 because I would have sold it for more. He obviously wasn't going to sell it for more because he had other inventory that he didn't sell on that day. However, these mazikim, these workers that damaged his barrel, can take off from him, instead of paying him the full 4 or the full 5, if assuming that it was before the market day and he sold out his whole inventory, that can take that. It takes a certain amount of effort to sell your produce, to sell your wine, and in addition, we had this before, Barzanaisa. Rashi has a machlokes, either it means you have to hire people to advertise, to call it out, or you have to tap into the barrel, and that the owner is excused from that. He's not going to have to do that, so they can take that off of what they have to pay. Look the Mishnah. Two people made an exchange. Ruvain had a par, and Shimon had a chamor, and they say, let's trade. You Ruvain need a chamor, and I, Shimon, need a par. Yolda. And what happened was, Ruvain got the chamar, but Shimon didn't yet get the Reuven handed over his chamar. I'm sorry, Shimon handed over his chamar to Reuven. The parah is still somewhere else. The Yolda, and the parah gave birth. It was a cow, and she gave birth. They discovered it afterwards. Similarly, someone who sold his shivcha, that means he gave money. What's the case? I keep mixing up the people. Shimon gave money to Reuven to buy Reuven's shivcha, and the shivcha is not there, and they find the shivcha, and she already gave birth. And the seller says that she gave birth, meaning Reuven, who is the seller, says that the par or the shifcha gave birth prior to the sale. And the other one says, no, it happened afterwards. Yachlaiku. The din is yachlaiku. The Gemara is going to explain why would it be yachlaiku. Why don't we say a lot of different svaras. If someone sold, he had two avodim, one was large and one was small. One large and one small. And they didn't do a kinyan with a star, which would specify which one they sold. They did a kinyan, let's say kasef. Says, I'm going to hand you kasef and take your eved, or take your star, or take your karka, which we know eved is like karka, which could be nikta b'kasef. And obviously they didn't specify, didn't hire a good lawyer, so now they're embroiled in controversy. And the purchaser says, I bought the big one. Allah, and the seller says, he says, I don't know. This is a bari v'shema, right? The lekeach says, I know this is what we agreed on. And the other one says, I don't remember what we agreed on. Zacha b'gadol. In that case, lekeach will get, as he claimed, he's going to get the gadol. But it's the other way around. The Meicher says, I know that we agreed to that, I'm going to sell you the small one. Again, we're going to go with the bari. Since the Meicher says he knows it was only the cotton, he gets the cotton. If one says it was, I know it was the large one, and the other one says the cotton, in this case, the seller will make a shvua that he sold the cotton. So this is obviously different than the first case, right? We're coming to a different conclusion. Before we said when each one is a bari, it's yachlaiku. Now we're saying that the meicher is going to make a shvua. Again, if they both don't know, then it's going to go back to the din of yachlaiku. Zak to Gemara. We go back to the first case, right? Where there was a trade, or someone bought kesef, or bought karka or eved with kesef. An eved with kesef, I'm sorry. We said yachlaiku. We're talking about whether one says they're arguing about whether the animal was born first or born afterwards. So that the shifcha had a baby before the sale or not, and they both are saying, I think it's like me, I believe I'm right, that I should get it. We say yachlaiku. In fact, why are we saying yachlaiku? Typically, we would understand that if Reuven is selling a para to Shimon, or he's selling a shifcha, it's still in Reuven's rishus. Or even if it's not, if Shimon has it in his rishus, whoever has it in their rishus, if somehow Shimon got his hands on the shifcha or got his hands on the para, he was typhus it. So we should say whoever has it in their rishus. The other one wants to say that this baby was born, this calf was born. The one who doesn't have his hands will say that it was born in my rishus. He should have to bring a raya. We're talking about where the para is standing in the marsh, so it's not in anyone's rishus. Shivchanami, the kind of a symptom. The shivcha also we're talking about it's not in either of their rishus. She's standing in some corner of the shrabim where sales often took place, the trading blocks, the auction blocks. It's not because it couldn't have been in the shrabim as well. We're just saying that's the way it typically would work. In fact, the Gemara. So even if it's talking about it where it's not in either their rishus, saying even if it's nobody's rishus. So b'derech klal, it means until that point it was in the rishus, presumably of the meicher. It was his para, it was his eved. So why don't we say that the lekeach was trying to say that this animal or this baby, the calf or the baby was born in his rishus. Let's say he's a meitzim chaveri alavaraya because the chazaka was until now was in the rishus of the meitzah. Going according to Sumchas, the Amar Mammon ha'matal b'safek cholkin b'loy shvua. That Sumcha says, Mammon, that is mutal b'safek, you make a chalukah without shvua, even b'makom, amaitzim chavera, even if there's a chazak. Practical Gemara, Emid Amar Sumcha is b'shema v'shema. Where do we know that Sumcha says this? That's in the case of Shema v'Shema, with neither of the people, right? This is back in Bava Kama. We had this Shorsh and Naga Chesapara, and we don't know whether he used Naga first or after, whether the baby was born before the Negicha or after the Negicha. So that's a Shema v'Shema. Neither of them know. But over here, they're both claiming that they know when the baby was born, when the Parah was born. Bari v'bari mi Amar, did something say even by a bari that we say it's chalkin? Amar Rav bar Rav Huna in Amar Sumchas afilu v'bari v'bari. Yeah, some will say it's in even by bar. So that is Rav bar Rav Huna. Rav Amar lo'olam ki Amar Sumchas shema v'shema v'bari bari loy. No, we're not going to say that. It's not going to be the explanation. Taka Sumchas only said is in where both of the parties are not sure. But if both parties are certain that they're entitled, then Sumchus would not say chalk. Avol bari bari loyam. The Tani zeh oy meshema achalem acharti v'zeh oy meshema shem lakachti. We're talking about over here. Our Mishnah is talking about Shema, even though the way it said was Hamachal Parach Hamar v'Yalda and Hamayim Shem Chad v'Yalda zeh ma'achalem acharti v'zeh oy meshema lakachti. He's not saying that I know for sure. He's saying I want to assert my rights. It's possible that it happened. The Meicher is saying it's possible it happened before the Mechira, and the Lekech is saying it's possible it happened after the Mechira. Tnan. So the Gemara asks, we continue in our Mishnah, which said, the last case of the Mishnah, where they both say they don't know. So Bishlam Rava. According to Rava, that said that our Mishnah, the first case of the Mishnah, is talking about that it's talking about a case of Shema v'Shema, that they were just asserting their rights as a possibility, but they weren't sure. The Sefer Shema Shema, Reisha Nami Shema v'Shema. It makes sense. The Reisha and the Sefer are both talking about Shema Shema. L'Rab bar Huna, Damar, in Amar Sumchas afilu bari bari, Hashta bari bari ami achlok Shema Shema mi bari. If we already said the din in the Reisha that where each one is saying, I'm for sure right, and even so we say achlok, why would we have to say certainly, if we say where they're both saying they're sure that they're right, we say achlaiku. Certainly, if they don't know, we're going to say achlaiku. Now, I mean, obviously, I just want to mention it. We often the Gemara will come to the conclusion that the Mishnah is just being symmetrical and saying all the possibilities. But we only say that when we're forced to. So we'd rather not say that possibility. So the Gemara, no. Imishum ha la'ira. That's not a good taina. Tana Sefer l'glu l'reisha. We have to say that the Sefer is talking about Zaymer Yadeh v'Zaymer Yadeh, in order that we should know that the reisha is talking about bari bar. Shaloi taima reisha shema v'shema al bari bari loy. If we wouldn't have had the Sefer, I would have thought taka that the reisha that said Zaymer Achalei Macharti, which the pashta lashon of the Mishnah is mashma, that it's talking about bari. Rava was machadish that it's talking about Shema v'Shema. If not for the Sefer that says Shema v'Shema explicitly, I would say the Reisha is talking about Bari Bari. On a Sefer Shema v'Shema b'chlal Reisha Bari Bari. So it's coming to tell you that's how we know that the Reisha is talking about Bari Bari. Imishum halayir Tana Sefer l'glu Reisha Shaloi Tamer Reisha Shema v'Shema avo Bari Bari loy. The Sefer Shema Shema b'chlal Reisha Bari Bari. Afilu hati yechlek. Even so yechlek. It's not. Correct the Gemara. Zelay megadol v'zay mekatan yishava hamaycha shekatan macha. We said a case of bari bari in the Sefer of the Mishnah, right? Where they said one said it was a large field or a large animal, and the other one said it was a cotton, and they both were baris about what happened. Yishava hamaycha, and in that case we said that he should make a shvua. I point to something to say mamnot usafik chalkin. Then it makes sense because he makes a shvua because the might have a mitzvah. El Rabba Rav Huna the Amar in Amar Sumchas afilu bari bari amay yishava meicha Since he was moided that it's at least a cotton, so he has to make a shvua of moided and mixes. Come on, I'm going to say later on that once you make a shvua deraisa, you can megalgal of the shvua that it's a gadol and not a cotton. Okay, we'll stop over here. Tomorrow, Be'ez Hashem, I'm going to be upstate, so we're going to be on Zoom.